In football, everything is obvious after it happens. My goal is to make everything obvious before it happens. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Seeing Red. This week we're going to take a look at Nebraska and what we need to do to get into the college football playoff and all the moves that we should make this offseason. The three things that I think should be the biggest priority for Nebraska this offseason are establishing an identity, nailing our defensive coordinator hire, and winning high-priority transfer targets. Establishing an identity is the most important aspect of the offseason. What are recruits going to know about Nebraska? So far, Nebraska's identity under Rule has not been clear in the slightest. We've had multiple coordinator change, and it feels more like Rule knows what he doesn't want more than he has a clear, defined goal of something that we're building towards. There was a moment last year in a press conference with Satterfield where a reporter asked him about yards per play and asked him what the goal was for the team on their yards per play. And I think Satterfield answered, I'm paraphrasing, some to the effect, I'm not even sure, what are we at? And I think it was like 4.8. And then he's like, I don't even know, what's the national average? And it was like 7.3 or something. I'm making these numbers up. But the fact that your offensive coordinator has no idea what your yards per play is, has no idea what the national average is, how is he supposed to know that that's an issue? How is he supposed to know that we're underperforming if we don't have clear defined goals as an offense? Under Tom Osborne, every single aspect of the game had clear defined goals. We want to rush for 7 yards a carry. We want to pass for 9 yards a play. We want to hold opposing offenses to under 100 yards rushing, etc. Every single aspect of the game was clearly defined, and they knew what they were working towards, so when they fell short, they could address it. That's not something that appears to be happening with Rule. It seems like, this is a problem, we'll fix it later. I think it's very easy to say we want to be better, but identity and defined goals that come with an identity will help you focus and give you clarity on what's going to help you achieve your mission. You can tell a group of 105 football players, hey, we're going to be better, but that's just going to lead to 105 people having their own idea of what better means. If you say, we're going to be a dominant running team, we're going to have dominant offensive linemen, we're going to have elite running backs, then that's clear defined goals. And then you can look at your team and say, hey, we have good linemen. Well, no, our goal was not to have good linemen. Our goal was to have dominant linemen. So we need to get back and we need to address this because good is not good enough. That's not our identity. And so you learn really quickly what works and what doesn't. Think about Iowa. Iowa's done the same thing for 20 years, and they have kicked the crap out of us 9 out of the last 10 because they know who they are. They don't get great recruits, but they know who they are. They know what their goals are. They never pass the ball. They still get receivers at their school. So they just focus on the areas that they know are important, which is the offense and defensive line, and they make sure they win those battles. And they've been kicking our ass every year because they have a defined identity, which I think is the most important thing. If we know who we are, then everything else will follow. If we don't have an identity, we're going to keep trying to chase our tail, and it's going to be like whack-a-mole. You're never going to be elite in every single phase of the game. Some area is going to be a little bit left behind, and it's not that we should give up on the area, but we need to find the areas that we want to dominate and really hammer those out. I think just about every Nebraska Cornhusker fan would agree with me when I say that our identity should be on the offensive and defensive lines. Especially in the Big Ten Conference, you got to be able to run the ball and stop the run if you want to win. It's pretty obvious. We're going to get better recruits than Iowa, so it's a very similar build to them. We're just going to get better recruits, so we're going to have a higher ceiling on our team. Part of establishing that identity and those clear goals is so that you can analyze yourself critically and make difficult decisions about what direction you're going and what you need to do to get there. So I feel like most of the Husker fans feel conflicted about Raiola as our offensive line coach. A lot of people want him to stay so Dylan doesn't leave, but not a lot of people want him to be coaching the offensive line. We don't feel like we've gotten great results from him. So if that's something that we're going to move on from, let's say Dylan goes into the draft next year and we plan to move on from Raiola, why don't we have the balls to do that now and say, hey, this isn't the best offensive line coach that we can get. We're not going to have a staff member here just to keep one player on staff. It's detrimental to our program. If we lose a great player, that happens and it sucks, but you have to move on. You can't let one player hold a program hostage. I don't think that's what Dylan is doing, for the record. I'm just saying it seems like there's an unwillingness to move on from an offensive line coach who's not been spectacular, and we need to be much, much better as a team. So this comes with analyzing yourself critically and making hard decisions so that you're in line with your identity. Another key aspect with having identity as a football team is it allows you to grow throughout the season. When you face hardships, you don't feel a necessary need to change everything about your offense or your defense. You say, hey, we have a couple tweaks that we need to change so we can get back to what we like to do, and so that we can continue to perfect what we want to do on offense, rather than that continual change that we've kind of seen over the past couple seasons with Rule, where we get to the November period and all of a sudden we're making changes and we're losing all the games in November because we don't have a clear defined identity, and we're trying to fix these leaky holes all over the team rather than just hammering home what we should be good at. The next most important thing for the Huskers offseason is nailing the defensive coordinator hire. There's been a lot of names floated out for the defensive coordinator position. The guy I like best is Vince Carez. He's a Toledo defensive coordinator currently. I'm just going to go over some stats from Toledo's defense compared to Nebraska's. I'll read Nebraska and then Toledo. So points per game last year, Nebraska averaged 22.92. That's what our defense gave up. That was 53rd in the country. Toledo gave up 14.6. That was 9th in the country, so top 10. Total yards, Nebraska gave up 312 last year. That's 23rd, or I should say this year. That's 23rd in the country. Toledo gave up 240, so 70 yards less per game. That was second in the country only to Ohio State. Rushing yards per game, Nebraska gave up 171, which was 95th in the country. Toledo gave up 90 yards a game, which is 8th in the country, top 10 again. Passing defense, this was a strength for Nebraska. We gave up 141 yards per game. That was second in the country. Toledo gave up 142 yards per game. That was 4th in the country, top 10 again. Third down percentage, Nebraska allowed 38.3%. Third down conversion rate, that was 55th in the country. Toledo was 28.2%. That's 6th in the country. Turnovers, Nebraska forced 10 on the season. Toledo forced 22. Sacks, Nebraska had 19. Toledo had 35. Interceptions, Nebraska had 6. Toledo had 13. Forced fumbles, Nebraska had 4. Toledo had 9. Big discrepancy there in the categories. Obviously, passing defense within a yard, that was our best category. That was one of the many categories. They were just a phenomenal defense all around. Had multiple guys that were all conference. I think Vince Carez would be a great hire for us. Before Carez was at Toledo, he was a coach at Mount Union, and he actually played at Mount Union. He's won multiple championships at Mount Union as a player and as a coach. And this coaching run that he was on there was phenomenal. He was the head coach for 7 seasons, and they went to the national title 5 out of 7, and he finished with a record of 95-6. And their conference record was 62-1 over 7 seasons. The guy's a phenomenal football coach. He knows ball. I'm going to go into a little bit of his defense and how they are able to have so much success and kind of what his thought process is on a defense. So we'll take a look at that. One of the things that I notice about Kara's defense is they do a really good job of controlling space and using leverage to force the offense to go where they want them to go, forcing you to the sideline and going deep. So I watched Kentucky play Toledo. It was the first game of the season. Toledo did a great job taking away that middle of the field. And Kentucky, I would say the thing that Toledo was giving up or allowing Kentucky to take shots on was deep shots along the sideline. And their DBs did a really good job of squeezing the receivers to the sideline and making the space small. So they're using the sideline as an additional defender, and the quarterback's got a very, very small window to drop the ball in on the sideline. So you end up with low percentage throws where if they catch one, they get a big play, but it's not sustainable for an offense to just take deep shots all day. And that's what their defense is essentially daring you to do. It's like, okay, take deep shots. We've got great corners. They're going to be in man coverage. You probably have a one-on-one, but are you going to be able to convert? And there was a play where a wide receiver actually got behind the Toledo corner for it would have been a 50-yard gain, and the corner just grabbed him, so he didn't catch it. So instead of giving up a 50-yard play, he made a really smart play, committed pass interference, and gave up a 15-yard penalty. Not something you want to see every play, but that's actually a genius play. If you know you're beat for a touchdown and you instead of giving up a 50-yard play or a 90-yard play, you give a 15-yard play, that's really good defense. And that's another thing I noticed. The situational awareness and the anticipation by his players was through the roof. The last step for the Nebraska Cornhuskers is obviously hitting on a big transfer class. This is going to be a major offseason focus for every team in the country. For us, we want to fix our run defense, so we're probably going to get some D linemen. I'm going to start a series of shorts here over the coming days where I'll try and release 1 or 2 breakdowns on individual players that I think Nebraska should target. Some of these guys haven't declared for the transfer portal. They're just at smaller schools, and they had phenomenal seasons. So, Matt Rule talked about this a little bit last year. People are always trying to poach people and entice people into the portal. So I'm not looking at names that are just in the portal. I'm looking at guys all across the country, seeing who can help our team. And if we got to poach somebody, that's the game. So look out for those shorts coming. I'll try and drop 1 or 2 a day on different players that I think are high impact transfers that would be a good addition to our team. All right, that's the video for this week. Please hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed, and go Big Red.